Okay, the last part of the endoplasmic system, or the endomembrane system, is the plasma membrane, because sometimes these vesicles have to move into the cell membrane, either to get into the cell or out of the cell. They have to pass through the cell membrane. So that's why we consider it part of the endomembrane system. But we've already talked about the plasma membrane in great detail with the prokaryotic cells. So real quickly again, try to remind yourself, what is it? Okay, so it's a double layer, lipid bilayer of phospholipids. It's got a hydrophilic portion and a hydrophobic portion. Remember, some parts interact with water, some parts do not. And its function, finally, is to control what goes in and out of the cell. And in some cases, as I said, it's these vesicles that travel in and out of the cells as part of the endomembrane system. Okay, now just a couple more structures that are found in plant cells that are specific to plant cells. So you might want to make a divide in your notes somehow here to show that these are only in plant cells. The one we mentioned earlier was the chloroplast. Remember, I brought up mitochondria and said it's both plants and animals, but chloroplasts are only in plants, and some bacteria that can go through photosynthesis as well. Its function is to capture sunlight energy and turn that energy into glucose. And then remember, the glucose is like the food for the plant. It goes to the plant's mitochondria, which can then make the glucose into ATP, or the energy it needs. So instead of a plant eating food like we do, it has these chloroplasts to make its food. It does contain chlorophyll, okay, down here at the bottom. Chlorophyll is a green pigment that is really good at soaking up solar energy, and it makes these carbohydrates, as I said, this glucose in the stroma. Again, we'll talk lots about chloroplasts later on when we get to photosynthesis, but basically within the fluid of the chloroplast is where the glucose is made. So, basic things you need to know: changes sun energy into glucose, has this special chlorophyll to help absorb the sun's energy. Second structure that is specific to plant cells is the vacuole, and its function is to store water. Pretty straightforward. Lots of times there's stuff dissolved in that water, like ions and other things, but basically it's a big storage container for water. That's what makes your veggies crunchy, like crisp lettuce, is because it's full of water and it's got lots of tension on that cell because of all that full water. And if there's no water, that tension is lost, so the plant wilts. So that's what creates a wilting plant, is not enough water because the vacuoles aren't full. You can see in this picture down here of a plant cell, most of the space in a lot of plant cells is a vacuole. Okay, so this is a vacuole right smack dab in the middle of the cell, and all these dark structures around the edges are the organelles that have been pushed to the side. So the vacuole can oftentimes take up the majority of the entire cell. Alright, another structure that's found in plant cells and not in animal cells is a cell wall. Now remember, cell walls are found in prokaryotic cells. We talked about how they have the peptidoglycan and they can stain gram-positive or gram-negative. However, the cell walls that are found in plant cells are made out of different materials. In fact, they're most often have the most common component being cellulose, which we talked about in our biochemistry unit. So they don't have peptidoglycan in them. They're mostly cellulose, but they kind of do the same thing as in bacterial cells. They provide support and protection to the cell membrane. So it's found on the outside of the cell membrane in plants. So if you imagine kind of this yellow stripe around the plant cell here as being the cell membrane, this thick green border around it is the cell wall. Again, things have to be able to get in and out of the cell wall so they can get in and out of the cell, but it still provides that support and protection. I have a link to this Cells Alive demo on the web page, and what it allows you to do is go to any of these structures down here at the bottom, and click on them and see where they are in the cell, what they look like, what they do. Just basically gives you a ton more information and background. I also have a link on my website to an animation of that whole endomembrane system and how those vesicles travel from one structure to another. So I would highly recommend looking at both of those and checking those out to just kind of further enhance your understanding of what these different structures are and how they work.